In 1999, Nigeria embraced democracy after years of military rule. Elections were usually conducted at the same time across the country, but less than 10 years later, the election cycle shifted. Over the weekend, Imo, Bayelsa and Kogi states went to the polls to elect new governors. During the elections, former President Goodluck Jonathan says he fears that if off-season elections are not addressed by the National Assembly, Nigeria might one day see its presidential election also go off-cycle. But what does this mean for our democracy? Can Nigeria regularize its election cycles? What will it entail? Just Nigeria's Wale Fakile has been speaking to experts.
Political gladiators are slugging it out again. The battleground, free states spread across three geopolitical zones in Nigeria. This bout of electoral jostles is a breakaway from the norm of cycle.
SDP 1-1.
It's Nigeria's last round of power play in 2023. It was election season yet again in some parts of Nigeria on Saturday. The 2023 elections held earlier this year in what was one of the most keen votes in recent times. So, what exactly are off-cycle elections and why do they happen? In Nigeria, governorship and state assembly races are normally synchronized to take place every 4 years. However, special elections known as off-cycle or by-elections can be called if a seat becomes vacant outside the usual cycle. This happens if an incumbent dies in office or is removed through impeachment or court ruling. The off-cycle season began with Anambra in 2006 when former governor Peter Obi, who contested on the platform of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, was sworn in. Obi had prayed the court to nullify the People's Democratic Party's Chris Ngege's victory as governor at the poll in 2003. At the moment, Nigeria has 8 off-cycle governorship elections in Anambra, Bayelsa, Kogi, Edo, Ondo, Ekiti, Osun, and Imo States.
I get worried about the issue of off-season elections. And I will use this unique opportunity to plead with the National Assembly that we need to block this off-season election.
Who's pushing the
It's
button?
very odd. It's not a global best practice.
Now that we understand what off-cycle elections are, let's go see how the votes played out in Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa states.
In Kogi, the candidate of the APC, Usman Ododo, was declared winner of the governorship election with more than 400,000 votes. Underscoring how hotly contested the election was, the candidate of the opposition PDP alleged result sheets were manipulated.
There's a massive protest in all polling units in Ogorimagongo local government of Kogi State right now. The result sheets have been, filled and tampered with already.
The Independent National Electoral Commission said it was investigating the allegations. While residents like this man had difficulties getting accredited, it was a smooth sailing for others.
I was the first person, so I didn't want to capture both my eye and this side of the
Kogi State in north-central Nigeria has battled serious security challenges in recent times, perhaps explaining the heavy presence of security operatives who barricaded major highways. Governor Hope Uzodinma clinched a second term in office after scoring more than 500,000 votes. While voting was on, some residents of Owerri, capital of the southeastern state, shunned polling units in search of potable water. They said the state has been without electricity and water after labor unions downed tools. Just Nigeria also saw skirmishes in parts of the state. Gunshots rang out at this polling unit, and this Labour Party agent got more than he bargained for at the coalition centre in Owerri.
You see for yourself that the security agencies have properly deployed and the entire space is manned and occupied. And the people are responding positively and people are behaving themselves.
It was business as usual for shoppers and traders at this market in Bayelsa on election day.
I want to eat. before we go fit vote, because if you no fit vote, if you no fit eat, you know if you go your polling unit.
Saturday's vote in the oil-rich southern state was marred by allegations of rigging, intimidation and violence. An electoral officer who was abducted on the eve of election regained freedom on D-Day. Protesters also stormed the INEC office in Yanagwa over alleged manipulation of results from Nembe Basambari. INEC declared incumbent Toyedere winner of the governorship election late on Monday evening. Saturday's elections were yet again a litmus test for INEC's capacity to deliver credible elections. The votes were also a referendum on the confidence of Nigerians in the country's electoral process.
The turnout for Imo was around 41%. In Kogi was 41%, in Imo was 28%. And these are significantly higher than the turnout rates that we saw during the presidential elections. Now, one thing that we're also looking at is the impact, is what really would have inspired voters to be much more confident in coming out to vote. We know that in preceding elections, we looked at issues around insecurity, issues around voter apathy.
February's presidential election had called to question INEC's ability to adhere to its own rules. Despite a promise to post presidential election results on its IRF portal for real-time viewing, it later announced that there was a glitch which distorted the process.
If I'm to judge basically looking at the attributes of what happens during off-cycle elections, one, there are less emphasis in terms of resource usage. You don't have that much pressure like you would. You remember that in the last presidential election, that it was reported that the IRF did go down at some point, which INEC admitted. And the reason was resource related in terms of budgeting for resource ahead of time. So that perhaps didn't happen this time.
During the general elections, many defied delays in commencement of voting in some states to exercise their rights. But cases of ballot box snatching and violence in almost every region showed how security remains a challenge in elections. Has anything changed so far?
The fact that the elections held across all the 3 states, apart from a few local governments where there were cases of disruption, I would say generally we can say or give the security agencies a pass mark.
It's become commonplace to contest election results at the courts after voting has ended. Analysts say these litigations leave a huge question mark on the nation's electoral processes.
If I was beaten fair and square, and there are technological footprints to attest to the fact that I was beaten fair and square, I would see the process of going to court as an unnecessary, cost on my part, because technological footprints are all there to show that indeed I lost this election. So INEC, going forward, should look at how to get the right level of stakeholders, build the right level of transparency, so that there can be trust.
It goes bigger than INEC. Everyone has a part to play in trying to make sure that electoral process is much more, peaceful, free, fair, and credible. So there's a long way to go, and there are different milestones to be hit. And the idea and the hope is that if we look back to previous elections, we can see that there has been a level of progress.
We're aware that INEC has a risk department that is domiciled under the Electoral Institute, and then it also has a security department. I think there is a need for those 2 departments to be brought together.
Freedom to choose leaders in free and fair elections is the greatest attribute of any democracy. To sustain the gains made so far, experts insist that elections in Nigeria must pass the credibility test at the polling unit, as voters expect, and not in a free-for-all between lawyers at the courts. Wale Fakile, Gist Nigeria.
Quite educative. What do you think about the story? Share your thoughts and pictures with us on X at Gist Nigeria TV. We would like to hear from you.